Hey everyone, this is Jeff Risdon with the Detroit Lions podcast and Lions Wire, and it's something to do just a little bit of an update. This will be a quick one, solo show, as Chris and I can't coordinate today. It is Tuesday morning. Had the Memorial Day weekend, which I hope you all enjoyed. Had a nice long car ride that gave me some time to have some thoughts about what's going on with the Lions. So, yeah, here we go. All right. Welcome. Good to be with y'all. Got another week of Lions here. We do get an OTA later this week that is open to the media. I will be in Allen Park for that one. And thought I'd talk about some of the things that I'm hoping to see while I'm there later this week. This is the first time that we're going to see the veterans really get into a practice. And look, it's OTAs. I don't expect a lot. But some of the things that I'm going to be looking for in that OTA session, namely, like, who's back from injuries? Is Aiden Hutchinson out there? How does he look? Obviously, he says that he's back. He's cleared. We're expecting to see him there. He's been training. How much can he do? Does he look inhibited at all? That's obviously one of the first things that I will be looking for. But, some other guys, too, who are coming off of injury. And one of them is it's somebody that I actually spotlighted on Draft Wire, where I also happen to be a managing editor, and that's Ennis Rakestraw, because this is an interesting offseason for Ennis Rakestraw. Second-round pick in 2024, played 45 snaps last year as a rookie. They signed DJ Reed. They signed Rock Yassin. They brought back Khalil Dorsey, and all those guys are competing for the same basic reserve spots behind Reed and Terry and Arnold on the outside. That is one thing that the coaches said. Deshae Townsend, the cornerbacks coach, talked about how Rakestraw is only going to be on the outside in 2025, which, by the way, is good. He's not a slot. He's not where he belongs. But he's competing with legit vets. Rock Yassin can play, folks. He's not some camp body. They signed him to compete for a role, and that role happens to be also what Ennis Rakestraw plays. Dude was hurt a lot as a rookie. He had core muscle surgery, which most of us know as sports hernia surgery, coming out of college at Mizzou. Had hamstring issue, he had an ankle issue, and then he had another hamstring issue that wound up ending his season. Just didn't get to see a lot of him. And he's a guy that's, he's got a lot to prove this offseason. So I want to see where he lines up. Is he backing up Reed? Is he backing up Arnold? Where does he fit in with Yassin? If Yassin's even here, these are voluntary. So you can't read, again, too much into him, but he's a guy that I'm going to be watching a lot this summer, because and I wrote about this at Lions Wire right after they drafted him. He was a guy that I was very conflicted about, because his game fits exactly what Detroit wants as an outside cornerback. He's physical. He's very good in press. He can flip his hips. He can turn. Doesn't necessarily run all that well, but injuries, man. This is a guy, he's had injury issues for a long time, and that concerned me. His build, so Missouri listed him at 6'1" and 195. The turned out to be 5'11" and change and 190. So he's a little bit more skinny and slender than was advertised, and sort of kind of plays that way. He's as physical as you can be for his size, but he's not a physically imposing presence. And I'm very curious as to how this is going to go for Ennis Rakestraw. So he will be a guy that I'm watching this week. If Rock Yassin is there, I'm curious as to see how he fits in, because he's a guy who also same kind of player, really. More of a physical press outside only corner. I know he's tried to play inside in time. And I'm going to catch myself here, because this time last year, I was among many, I'm not alone in this, who was convinced that Amik Robertson could only play outside. And I based that off of his college career at Louisiana Tech and also his early Raiders career where they tried him in the slot and he was wretched. He was a short outside corner. Well, that old dog learned some new tricks last year and wound up being a pretty darn good slot, which surprised me pleasantly. Very happy about that. And he is our starting cornerback, our starting slot going into the 2025 season. I don't expect that to change. Also want to see if he's healthy because he missed the end of the season. Got hurt in the Washington game. Ugh. Injuries, man. We just hope that nobody gets hurt. I would really like an off season where nobody gets hurt. But like OTAs, no hamstrings, no tight calves, none of that. Injury free would be great, especially for Rake straw. Yeah. So we have to be careful not to pigeonhole guys too much, but I would much rather see Rock Ya-Sin outside. Can't say because of the Amik Robertson experience that we all have gone through, we can't definitively say that he can't play inside, but it feels like the Lions want him outside. And that's, it's interesting to see what happens with Rakestraw on that. And remember, Khalil Dorsey is still in that mix, and Khalil Dorsey is a better special teams player than both of those guys. Special teams absolutely matter for the depth on this team, specifically at cornerback, tight end, running back. Like, you've got to play special teams. So, and Rakestraw did, and we'll see where he fits in with those in his second year. But that's one that I'm looking for. I will be watching another guy that I'm watching closely, and he hasn't really gotten a lot of run this offseason. That's Trevor Nowaske, where the Lions linebacker, Saginaw Valley State, Canton native, great guy, easy guy to root for, coming into his third season now. This is a guy who I'm very curious where he fits. So the Lions efforted to make him a Sam last year, and he had some success in that. He's kind of a blitz happy type body. Doesn't really fit off ball as well as some other guys that they brought in, notably Grant Stewart. He didn't really fit in the Rodrigo role. Rodrigo, by the way, another guy coming off of injury that I hope to see later this week. Hopefully he's moving well and healthy and back, because that would be great. Nothing but love for Rodrigo and his reserve linebacker role. But, we're going to talk more about linebackers in a second. I'll get to it. But I want to talk about Nowaske for a sec. I want to see development in him where I will be comfortable, but more importantly, the Lions will be comfortable with him being the reserve Sam behind Derek Barnes, and maybe possibly even get on the field a little bit more in pass rush sub packages. His potential's there. He can do those things. We've seen it. We saw it in camp. We saw it in preseason. Regular season, he needs a little bit more. But he's a guy that can give you more. The athleticism is there. The football IQ is there. It's just a matter of, can he do it more consistently? So Trevor Nowaske is a guy that I'm going to be watching a lot in OTAs later this week, but also later in the offseason and in the training camp in preseason. How much does he play? How well does he play? Can he show anything in coverage beyond just like running and trailing a guy and getting his hands up in the air and trying to get in the way? That would be a nice development. So he's one. Now, linebackers. Told you all I'm recording this Tuesday morning. I have just published before this that the Lions have signed veteran Zach Cunningham. And that's an interesting one to me. Zack Cunningham is a guy that I know very well. Off-ball linebacker, 2017 second-round pick of the Houston Texans. I happened to cover the Texans throughout his time there. He was there through the 2021 season. Got traded mid-season or cut mid-season. I don't even remember. This is a guy who led the NFL in tackles in 2020. Tackle machine as an off-ball linebacker. But you knew there was a but coming, right? Yeah, I know. Very much an empty calorie tackler. Not a pass rusher. Not a coverage guy. Doesn't force turnovers. Doesn't get his hands on balls in coverage. Doesn't create fumbles. Doesn't get sacks. Like, he's a guy who runs sideline to sideline and makes tackles, and he doesn't really make them behind the line or at the line either. The Texans used him behind a very good line that included DJ Reader, by the way. Current Lion nose tackle. Another guy to watch this offseason. Is he healthy? Is he fired up? How much does he interact with Tyleik Williams? Does he groom him? Does he help him? I think all of the answer to all those questions will be yes, but it still bears watching. But Zack Cunningham, he's bounced around a lot since his Texans heyday. He played for the Eagles, actually started over Nakobe Dean when Dean was hurt in their 2023 season. Again, a lot of tackles 4 to 6 yards down the field. That's sort of what he does. Last year he was in Denver. He barely played. They signed him as insurance. They have a very good linebacking core in Denver. He wasn't needed. Doesn't do a lot on special teams. So this is interesting, and it dovetails in with Alex Anzalone is wanting more money. And this is just me thinking out loud here. Don't read any more into it than that, but this is my thought process here. Did they sign Zack Cunningham as, I want to call it a shot across the bow of Alex Anzalone, but more of like a small message like, hey, we can find guys who can do what you do. They don't do it as well as you do. And Anzalone is a much, much better player than Zack Cunningham, certainly at this point in Cunningham's career. And probably he always has been. Again, Cunningham is one of those guys that, like, the IDP fantasy folks absolutely loved when he was getting, he got over 100 tackles 3 years in a row. But again, they're like empty calorie tackles. Not a disrespect. That's what he did. You know, the Texans defensive line was such that, you know, their off-ball linebackers made a crap ton of tackles. Their safeties did too. Because their linemen tied up everybody and kept him clean. Guess what the Lions defense does? They keep their linebackers clean. Jack Campbell, Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes, they're at their best when they're strafing clean. Lions defensive line does a very good job of that. DJ Reader does a very good job of that. So Zack Cunningham is an interesting fit in that. And I wonder, you know, is he a camp body? Could be. But they've signed, you know, Rodrigo's here. Like, their top 4 linebackers, Anzalone, Campbell, Barnes, Rodrigo. Like, that's a great linebacking core. Grant Stewart plays with his hair on fire. He is your replacement for Jalen Reeves-Maybin as a special teamer. I think he can play more. He can play, folks. He's got some weak side linebacker skills. He has some Sam skills if you ask him to do that. Much more in the coverage of tight ends and you know, running across the field with a move tight end, or if a running back flares out like that. That's sort of what he does well. They're good there. Nowaske, he's got to fit somewhere, right? Now they bring in Zach. Like, there's a lot of guys. You know, they have Deron Gilbert, like, who looked really good in the rookie minicamp in his second season. Can't catch, but other than that, he looked very fluid. They're loaded at linebacker right now, and the timing for Zack Cunningham also makes me think a little. Like, why did he sign here now? That's what leads me to think, you know, that there's something going on, like he's pushing Anzalone to get into camp. Again, obviously it's voluntary, so if he's not here this week, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. But this is what NFL teams do, and the Lions haven't really been that type of a message sending team, which is one of the reasons why it's just me thinking, like, I could very well be completely off base here, but it is something to watch. And, you know, again, Cunningham, they could sign him today on Tuesday. This weekend, you know, he could be gone next week because he will have other opportunities. You would assume, as a 30-year-old linebacker who does have pelts on the wall, Um, it's interesting that he chose Detroit as much as the Lions went after him, because there are a lot of other teams who have a lot bigger need at off-ball linebacker than what Detroit does. The Lions might not have the best linebacking core, but they're freaking deep, man, and good. If Malcolm Rodriguez is your number 4 linebacker, you do not have a linebacker problem at all. So it's a little bit of a noodle scratcher, honestly. And that's something, I hope to be able to talk to some people beyond the players this week, and try to get more insight on that. But we'll check back on that. We'll see. A couple other guys that I'm going to be watching this week. I want to watch the running back depth and the reps. Sione Vaki. He's got some things to prove as your number 4 running back. And one of the things that came out, because in the last solo video I did, I talked about the safeties and the safety depth. Y'all, Sione Vaki is not playing safety. He is not an NFL safety. If you watched him at Utah, you watched him play strong safety there, the hybrid linebacker. Like I said it back at his draft time, I'll say it again. He's a train tracks player as a safety. If you're on his train tracks, you will die. Like, no question about it. But if you're not on his train tracks, he might never see you. He will certainly not touch you. He just doesn't, that's not what he does. The Lions correctly saw him as a better running back prospect than safety, at least correct in my opinion. They were, by the way, the only team that saw him that way. That's one of the reasons why he was drafted. He is a special teamer. He was drafted for special teams. Dave Phipp has made that very clear. That was his toy in the 2024 draft. Dan Jackson is his toy in the 2025 draft. Although Dominic Lovett might be that guy too. But again, there aren't roster spots for those players at safety or depth wide receiver. It could be for Jackson. He could win his way up. Another one to watch. But I'm watching Vaki at running back, and like they signed my guy from Ohio. He's got a chance to make some noise. They have Craig Reynolds back. They want to see Vaki show that he can catch out of the backfield, pass protection. Those are things that were works in progress a year ago. He has the potential to grow in those. Needs to grow in those. He's another one that I'm going to be watching. Don't expect much out of Gibbs or Monty, if at all, if they're even here. Again, it's voluntary. The Lions emphasize that. If somebody's not there, it's not, they don't care. It's voluntary. They know, they trust their guys are getting work. It's part of the culture of Detroit. They don't bring in guys who aren't going to work. They trust their players to have their work done. And if they're not here doing it, you better believe Alex Anzalone is not going to show up out of shape with a dad bod. Like, he's going to be ready to rock and roll. And, hair flying, making tackles, covering tight ends as well as anybody in the league. Like, that's not going to change. Even if he's not here for OTAs. Nothing to worry about there. Nothing to look at. A couple other people that I'm going to be watching, Levi Onwuzurike, where does he line up? They brought him back. They have an interesting depth between defensive tackle, defensive end, and he can kind of straddle both of those lines better than Josh Paschal can. Mekhi Wingo, I don't expect to be out there. He got hurt late in the season. I'm curious, does Levi play inside more? Does he play outside more? Things that I'm looking at. Look, it's a new defense. We have a new defensive coordinator in Kelvin Shepard. Are they going to be running more odd man fronts, 3 or 5, or the 3-man front with the 2 outside linebackers, edges, whatever you want to call them, being basically de facto 5th lineman rushing the passer? Because I do think that you're going to see some of that. And it's interesting that, again, that's where Nowaske can fit. That's certainly where Derek Barnes can fit. It's where a guy like Marcus Davenport is really at his best. Standing up and playing power role. Maybe put a hand in the dirt to show a look, but, blast the tight end on the way through. on your way to the quarterback. Like that's Davenport's bread and butter, baby. So I'm curious as to how that's going to go. Are we going to play more of seven between the defensive line and the linebackers rather than 6 with the base nickel package? What does that mean? Like, these are formationally, I kind of want to see that. Kelvin Shepard's a linebacker at heart. We've got great linebacker depth. We just talked about that. Do they play on the field more than the safeties where you have Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, who are both fantastic, and then Dan Jackson, Ian Kennelly, Eric Hallett, Avonte Maddox. Probably need to throw him in. He's the third safety for now. I talked about that on a Philly podcast that I did, the Philly Sports Table, and off air, the guy laughed at me. Like he can't play safety, dude. Like, we'll see. I'm a little more optimistic on that, but Philly fans are kind of snickering if the Lions are playing Maddox as their third safety. But they're a little spoiled, deservedly so. They're wearing rings that we want. Let's go get those rings, Lions. I'm going to call it. You know what? Thank you for your time, y'all. Thanks for hitting like and subscribe. We're going to get back with you later this week. I will have a post-practice report on Friday. It might be delayed a little bit because I do have to drive home before I do it, and it's about a 3-hour drive home. So that gives me time to gather my thoughts and come up hopefully with something good. But that will happen late this week. You might get it Friday, you might get Saturday. We'll see. But until then, this is Jeff Risdon from Lions Wire and Detroit Lions Podcast. Thanks for watching.